Hello, and welcome to the second day of sessions at the EGX Theatre 2019. Thank you very much for coming, and hello to everybody out there watching on Twitch. Coming up later today, we've got sessions on management games, Battletoads, Life is Strange, among other things. But now, with a session on how to get a career in esports, please let me hand you over to Dominic from British Esports.
Thank you, Ollie. Hello, everyone. Yep, my name's Dominic. I'm from the British Esports Association. We run tournaments in colleges and schools. And I also run Esports News UK, which is a League of Legends-focused news site. We've got a fantastic panel for you today talking about how to turn your passion into a profession in esports. We had a couple of dropouts, but we've got some great replacements in Alice and Kieran. So I'd like the panel to introduce themselves, starting with yourself, please, Mary.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Mary Antieul. I head up the partnerships and esports operations team at Belong. We have 21 arenas across the UK, so in lots of cities where we sit within game stores, so anyone who purchases games from there. We purchased a company called Multiplay in 2015 who provided LANs for over 20 years. They're at Insomnia at the NEC. We basically look to host big communities of players where we'll run lots of different tournaments, lots of different activities. My role is very much around working with all of our publishers and also with esports organisations, esports teams like Excel, to host activities and really bring players together. All of our arenas have got tribe locations, so tribe identities like London Lionhearts or Manchester Swarm, where the players can come together and represent their local towns and cities in the tournaments we do.
Hi, I'm Gregan, and I am team manager of Renault Sport Team Vitality's Rocket League team, and I also manage our Street Fighter player who's competing here today. I got into esports through commentary originally, so I used to commentate Rocket League and host a few other games. And as time went on, I decided to take the safer route and go down the management role. And I've now been doing it for a year and a half. And yeah, it just keeps getting better and better.
I'm Alice Lehman. I'm the Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer for the North of the UK for the British Esports Association. So my role is primarily to talk to schools and colleges all across the UK, help promote our British Esports Championships, which we've got over 133 teams involved this year, which is amazing for our first season in second year. And I mainly promote esports, understand how it can get transferable skills for the students involved, and hopefully get some more UK esports talent growing up from an early age.
Hi everyone, Kieran Holmes-Darby, co-founder and CEO of XL Esports. XL is a UK-based leading esports and gaming entertainment brand, with our premier product being our League of Legends team that competes in Riot Games' League of Legends European Championship.
Excellent. So I think Gregan alluded to it a little bit there about how you got into esports. I think we had a discussion before this panel began when we got into esports professionally full-time. It's only about 4 years ago, and we're in good positions now. So maybe you guys could tell us about how you actually got a career in esports, how you actually landed a job, because hearing from yourselves, those real-world experiences may be valuable for people listening.
Yeah, so I have been a gamer for many, many years, so all the way from kind of a Game Boy era. I went and worked at Game in 2005 and haven't left yet. So I very much came in, started in the stores, and then moved into Game's head office. And as Game, obviously being a physical retailer, we started to look at how we could bring people into the stores in a different way. So came up with bringing in an events expertise, which was the Multiplay team, and combined that into retail to start to look at doing some experiential elements in the stores. And I've worked with publishers, so the likes of PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo since 2013. And so I started to transition my role very much into taking those relationships and moving towards more of a traditional esports and the new and upcoming esports publishers, and working with those guys to see how we could introduce into Belong.
What's your background before you got the job game, Mary. For anyone interested into getting into a role similar to yours,
Yeah.
how did you do that? What you do, your qualifications and things like that?
Yeah, so I went to university. I did psychology, so not very related, but I was very lucky actually in that I was very passionate about gaming, and that's really what got me into game itself. So having the passion was the reason that I got into the industry.
Absolutely. And yourself, Gregan, you said you started commentating and things like that.
Yeah, actually, before commentary, there was a bit of a story getting into that world. I used to make maps in Minecraft. I used to work for a community called Nox Crew, and we made video games within Minecraft and released them online. Used to go to Insomnia Gaming Festival and have a booth where people could come and play our games. And that kind of got a foot in the door in the gaming industry. You go along to these events, you meet people, you network, and I think Insomnia 55, which was my 5th, I went to 13 Insomnias in a row, because I felt the need to be at the event. I paid my own money to make sure I got there every single time. And at I-55, I did a panel on how to make maps in Minecraft. The next event, Rocket League, came out, which is the game I work in now. And I was asked to be a guest commentator because 2 of my friends were commentating it. They knew I was reasonably good at the game. And from that, I just sent emails out. And in fact, anyone who follows Rocket League, I sent my first email out before RLCS even existed to James Bott, who is now one of the most well-known commentators. And he instantly picked me up and said, "You've done something. No one else has done anything yet. So come and get involved." And I used to volunteer 15 plus hours a week commentating from my room at home. And then eventually you start getting the studio opportunities and it spirals out from there. But I got very lucky actually. Gfinity Elite Series came around. They picked me up and got me involved in that. And then from that I got an opportunity to go out to LA and host Clash Royale's first season of Esports. And I hadn't played Clash Royale once. I was one of the few people in the world who'd never played Clash Royale. And I got asked to host their show. And so I got flown out to LA in 3 days from my first confrontation with them. And they said, "Okay, what do you actually know about Clash Royale?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing." And I had to commentate the game having never played it before. So I had to make up the names of the units. I had to pretend I knew what I was talking about and make it very clear to them that I will learn this game. And then a month later, I went out to LA, worked for a month and a half out there, which is where I met Team Vitality. And, you know, it all just spirals out from there. And it's all about meeting the right people, saying yes to every opportunity you get, and always having a backup plan. So you said about university. I was studying medicine at university, which now is no longer a thing. I dropped out of that.
Before we move on to you, Alice, I just wanted to add and tap into something you mentioned there, Mike. That the person you emailed, they said no one else is doing this yet, so we'll take you. And I think that's an important point to note. Try and find your niche. We get a lot of emails at the British Esports Association from people saying, "I want to work in esports." And I ask them, "Well, what do you want to do?" "I don't know." Try and find out what it is you want to do, whether it's a caster, whether it's management, playing, journalism. When I set up my site 4 years ago, there were a ton of esports news sites already out there. They weren't huge, they weren't the numbers like there are now, but there was no one writing about the UK esports scene. So that's what I did, and people took note of it because there was no one else. If you can put yourself in a place where there's no competition, you'll do well for yourself and make yourself a name. And
Just want to add to that. I mean, Kieran will talk a bit about it when he talks about setting up Excel, but you have to be courageous sometimes, and you have to just look at yourself and go, "I'm going to take a risk." So for me with Insomnia, it was investing in train tickets, investing in accommodation to go to the event, making me at a loss. Same thing with the commentary. I looked at every other commentator in the scene and went, "How many hours are you doing a week? I'm going to try and do more than that. I want to be the guy who everyone goes, that's the commentator I want to listen to." And I asked for tips from other people. You just want to be the person who is the best in your field, and that requires hard work, willing to learn, and willing to have a loss of potentially money, whether it's time. I mean, I had to retake a year of university because I no life my evenings commentating Rocket League.
in the short term, right? No money.
I mean, it was a good investment at the time, and to be honest, it's one of those challenges that you learn. You've got to balance your life with the things that aren't esports, and once obviously you're lucky enough like we are to have it as your job, you can spend 40 plus hours a week doing it and love it. But when it's not your job and you're doing it voluntarily, you definitely have to find that balance between this is something to set up experience and this is something that's going to get in the way of my life. And I think there's a lot of people who are trying to find that balance right now, whether it's trying to become a pro player, whether it's trying to become a commentator, whether it's coming along to events when actually you shouldn't be at EGX this weekend, but actually it's finding those balances. And I think a lot of people here will be looking for that opportunity.
Definitely. And Alice, you've had an interesting background because you broke into full-time work through volunteering, right?
Yes, so my background's not quite exciting. I went to university, same as most people would. The main way I got into esports was through building my PC in first year. My friend introduced me to Dota 2. I got very hooked on the whole esports thing, watched nearly all the majors and the minors. Tried to play with a team online, did very terribly, realized that I can't play professionally at all. So then I started to look at getting volunteering experience and the whole background scene of it. So I was really lucky enough on my year abroad to go to America for the year and study, and they had a really great esports society there. So I kind of admined a little bit for them with their LANs. It was kind of like really small scale, but it gave me enough insight to realize this might be something I really want to do, like the background behind esports. So when I came back, I signed up to be a volunteer at the British Esports Association, and luckily enough, they offered me the opportunity to admin for our pilot for our British Esports Championships, which only is small, about 6 or 8 schools, I believe it was, that got involved. And just through doing all that experience, it was absolutely fantastic. Luckily enough, I had only my final year, so I had not many lectures to go to, so I had enough time to do this in my spare time, which, as like Mike said, it's a lot about getting the balance right. So I was very aware of what I wanted to do and how I would spread the time between balancing the volunteering and my studies and my part-time job I had. So when I graduated, I put more dedication into the volunteering side of it, along with my shift work that I got when I graduated. So I was lucky enough to, again, volunteer for the British Esports Championships, did more of the admin. I worked closely with Natasha, who previously worked for us, and Dom and Tom and everyone else at British Esports. It was amazing to just see the whole experience and the things behind that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And then when this job opened up for the schools and colleges, I applied for it, and I was lucky enough to get it, which was amazing. But it's not your typical route, and I decided to go down volunteering because that was right for me, and I didn't have the opportunities otherwise. But I definitely recommend it. If you're not sure whether it's right for you, just to try it, and then if it's not right, then find another avenue to go down. You still get great skills you can use in any industry.
Definitely. And Kieran, yourself, you have an interesting background. I've seen Excel Esports go from, the small grassroots organisation to this huge European LEC team. Tell us a bit about how that came about.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I've always been a gamer. Right back to Ratchet and Clank and Crash Team Racing days, all the way through, always played video games, always loved it, and it's always been a passion of mine. Later, esports, and watching, the MLG Halo days back in sort of 2013 era. So then went to university, studied law, had a training contract to be a lawyer, and that's all out the window now, and that's never going to happen. Essentially, during university, these guys have heard this story before, but some of you may not have in the crowd, sat in a Wetherspoons pub with my brother having a pint, talking about gaming and esports. It's a passion of ours. Can we get involved in any way? Saw that the UK esports scene was massively underdeveloped, to be honest, at the time. This is November 2014 time. And felt like there was a real opportunity to create an esports team and do things, morally, ethically better than were being done at the time. It was never really going to be a career. It was just a passion project, something for me to do on the side while at university, and something for my brother to do while he was a management consultant at KPMG, and that's what he wanted to do on the side. Just a passion project, bedroom organization. I created our first logo in my uni apartment. It was awful. I suppose similar to Alice, decided that creating an esports team was the way to go because wasn't good enough to be a pro player and still terrible at every video game that I try. And we just kind of exploded and grew with the industry. We kind of grabbed onto the coattails of what was happening here in the UK, established ourselves as one of the leading UK esports teams, competing in all the kind of regional leagues we had going on here at the UK. And then last year, the opportunity came up to apply to be a part of the LEC, the League of Legends European Championship. Again, it was an opportunity that it's about having a bit of courage and backing yourself. It was something that if you ask Dom, and do you think XL is going to be in the LEC next year and midway through 2018, he would have said no way in hell. But we decided that we wanted to put an application together, 170-page application, business plan of basically what we're going to do in the next 5 years. And clearly Riot bought into that and said, yeah, look, these guys are just a UK regional team right now, but what can they be in the future? No one's really paying attention to the UK market. These guys are. They're going to create a great community, et cetera, et cetera. And that point, really, post Elite Series, which was a great product, that point was really when my life really changed. And getting accepted into the LEC was like, okay, I was doing it full time at the time, but you're a 3-person organization with not a lot of funding to being now a 30-person organization with some serious backers. That was when it really, got real for us.
And you guys have given some good experiences there about how you got involved. What advice would you give to people who maybe don't know how to get started? They don't know what field to go in, whether they should volunteer, look for a job. I always advise people to, if you're looking for work, go on sites like Hitmarker, look at current jobs, look every week. Something might crop up, and if you can apply early, you can benefit from that. But is there any specific advice any of you would like to share to people who maybe don't know how to start?
So perhaps a little bit counterintuitively, what I would say is gaming and esports is a passion. It's okay if that's all it ever is for you. Like, it's okay if that is what you do in your spare time and that is, what you love to do. It's okay if that's as far as it goes. It doesn't have to become a career. What I will say, though, is the amount of opportunity that is coming up in the UK, especially now, is massively growing. I just said we went from a 3-person company to a 30-person company. That's not 30 esports players and managers. That's financial controllers, marketeers, commercial people, every kind of, if you look at a sports team, how many people work in a sports team and what the different areas are, same for an esports team. So, massive opportunity, and agree with Dom, keep your ears to the ground. Networking is probably the biggest bit of advice I could give to anyone, and something that I took on really early is get to know people, talk to people. Events like this are great because you can walk up to someone and say, hey, what do you do? Can I spare 5 minutes of your time for a coffee or whatever? And just chat to people, and you will open up doors for yourself if you're just talking to lots of people in the industry.
Yeah, I think just to add to Kieran's point, asking people for help and advice is really, really important. Just finding people who can mentor you in the areas that you want to understand better is a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah, up until about 3-4 years ago, I feel like the industry was full of people faking it until they made it. And that's because there wasn't a way to do it, because it was growing so fast. No one had experience in esports. People were asking 3 years of experience in esports when no one had that at the time. Now it's obviously getting different as people are starting to work in the industry for longer, and you're starting to get experts from other fields come in with a passion in esports. But what I would say is get experience either through volunteering, either through coming to events, and maybe just one booth every year at an event, or spending some time organising something at your university. For me, the biggest experience that Vitality looked into was running a society at university that had very convertible skills. It wasn't necessarily esports. They know I'm passionate about esports because I love Rocket League, and I can talk about that for hours. But in terms of the skills that they want for their job, you have to find them from other places. So try and use experience from elsewhere to apply it. And also what you said about it can just be a passion. I think a lot of people at the moment are trying to dedicate their life to esports. They're telling their parents, hey, Mum, I'm really good at Fortnite. I'm going to be the best player in the world. And that's not going to work every time. In fact, there's hundreds of other people who have got the same mindset, and it's very hard to be that one who makes it. Obviously, if you do, it's a great story to tell, but always have a backup plan, whether that's studies, whether that's a part-time job, whether that's saying, actually, esports isn't for me and I might have to find another route.
I would say, actually, the being a pro player is probably the hardest career to grab in esports, because it's like professional football. There are a lot of other people wanting to get into that position, and not only do you need an immense amount of talent, you also need a lot of luck and good networking as well.
If you think about how many League of Legends players, for example, there are in Europe, there are 50 people that compete professionally in the LEC. 50 of everyone who plays League of Legends in Europe. Like, it's basically like becoming a Premier League footballer, based on the number of people that play football, right? The percentage chance is very low. So, yeah, much like me and Alice did, you might need to look yourself in the mirror and go, you are not good enough, and you need to do something else if you want to be in this industry.
I would say just try it as well, more than anything. So I know I did a full-time job, and then obviously part-time I volunteered. That's because I said to myself I wanted to have it as a backup, that I'd know I'd have the opportunity if I wanted to, and I wasn't sure if it was right for me. It turns out that I really enjoyed it, and it was something I wanted to pursue. But by having it as a backup to begin with, I obviously had more opportunities. But esports itself is really broad. Like, you can go into one side and come out and completely the other end of the spectrum. You had no idea you were going to go down to begin with. It's such a massive industry. It's changing all the time. So you might go in thinking you desperately want to be a caster, and then you come out actually thinking, no, I want to be a manager now. You can do that. It's really developing, and it's constantly changing. So just try it more than anything, and then see where it goes. You can always move those skills somewhere else into another industry.
One thing I wanted to move on to, Mike, which you brought up, was universities. Over the past year or so, we've seen several universities and colleges offer degrees and courses in esports. And, that will work for some people. But I think one of the first ones at Staffordshire University is seen as very much an events management course. They've just opened an amazing new facility, as I understand it, in London. What are your thoughts on degrees? Because I guess obviously people that think about that have to weigh up the cost involved and what they'll get out of it.
I guess I'm the only one here who doesn't actually have a degree, and I wouldn't recommend this. This is not the route to take. I had to drop out of university. I didn't have to, actually. I could have been smart and balanced my life a bit better. But I chose to drop out of university at the point where I felt university was getting in the way of my job. I had to start declining opportunities in esports whilst I was studying, and I couldn't understand why to continue studying. But these guys here have got degrees, which a degree doesn't necessarily show the skills in the area the degree says. It shows that you've been to university, you've worked hard, you've managed to grind your way through something that's not necessarily fun, because there are parts of university that aren't fun. But it's the extra things. It's the working in the esports society, it's working in sports societies, it's taking away the skills from it and showing what you learn at university. And that's the important bit, because we're all in this room, we're all passionate about gaming, we're all passionate about esports, so you don't need to show that with a degree that's specific to esports. And as you mentioned, there's roles within esports that aren't necessarily focused around the gaming. For example, most of us here, I don't think any of us require gaming as part of our job. We could all
Unfortunately not.
We could play 0 hours of video games a month and we'd still be able to do our job just fine. And that's the key now, is there's jobs in esports. So if you go to university and study accounting and finance, there is a job in an organization somewhere that does accounting and financial jobs related to esports. So find the things you're good at, find the things you're also passionate about. For me, it was health and caring for people, and then finding a way to link that into esports, which is your passion, and that's where jobs will form.
We get emails about this quite a lot, and especially from players who used to be a part of the XL organisation when we were kind of at the amateur semi-pro level. Often them or their parents will reach out and go, hey, you know how passionate about esports these kids at the time are. What can they do? Because it's the only thing that they want to do. The Staffordshire University course has come up a lot, as it's kind of the only dedicated esports degree in the UK right now.
There's more emerging. I think University of Chichester and a few others are emerging. Yep.
Cool. And look, these are great, and they're a really good start. But again, it's about, you need to look at the specifics of that course. Esports is a very broad term. It's like saying, oh, I'm going to do a sports degree. Well, are you going to be a professional player? Like, what are you doing in sports? So with that, if the esports course is an events management course and you want to go and work in esports events, crack on. However, if you want to do social media in esports or be a marketeer in esports, you should probably go do a marketing degree and get experience in esports, volunteering or all of the things that these guys have already mentioned on the side. And then when I see your CV and it says, well, I've got a marketing degree, but I also got a real passion for gaming and esports, and these are all the things I've done in esports, you become a very, very exciting prospect for a gaming and esports organisation.
I'm conscious of time. I do want to allow for some questions. So if you guys, anyone in the audience that wants to ask something, please take a few minutes to think of something, and then we'll open up to questions. I guess lastly, there's a few things I wanted to cover. what a typical day looks like, maybe salaries as well, because there are people out there that might not know what it pays. It varies wildly, I guess, like anything, depending on what the area is. But there's also the freelance versus the full-time aspect as well. Is there anything you guys want to touch on in those areas?
I think the what's a typical day look like is an interesting one. I like to call my hours conscious hours. Whenever I'm conscious, I could be working. And that varies depending on when events are. For example, at the moment, every Sunday evening I'm working, which is very much against the grain of normal industries. And sometimes I can get up at 7, smash out work by 12, and then have the rest of the day free. Other days, I'll get up at 7 and work until I fall asleep. It just depends on what's coming up, and that's the typical day for a team manager or a talent or someone who works with the events. But then you've got organizations, I'm sure you two can probably vouch for it. There are some more 9-to-5 style jobs, and it's just finding what works for you as a person, and the same thing with salary as well. The price range of every job varies, from some being voluntary, where you're actually spending your own money to get the work, and then all the way up to you're earning stupid amounts of money because it's a growing industry, where the top get extortionate amount of money. And that's just what a competitive industry is going to be like, and it's about finding what is important to you, whether it's having free evenings, whether it's having free weekends, whether it's going to events. You've got to find your own work balance.
Yeah, it massively depends on what the job is. Esports in general is not a 9-to-5 at all. Our general working hours are 10 to 6 in the office, but to be honest, our social media specialists are expected to be online in the evenings, at weekends. League of Legends Worlds is going on right now all the time. We want to be tweeting about that and getting involved with that. So if I don't see my social media manager at 10 a.m. in the morning, I'm not going to be upset, because I know they've probably stayed up till 9 p.m. the night before tweeting, etc. Whereas my commercial team are going to be more 9-to-5, because they're reaching out to brands and commercial partners, and those people will be on 9-to-5, so it makes sense for them to kind of mirror that. So it really depends. I think if my commercial team heard me say they work 9-to-5, they'd probably shoot me, because they work a lot harder than that, and they'll often go late into the night. But yeah, it massively depends what job. Salaries probably aren't really worth talking about, because it's so dependent on where you are. But yeah, they are. Esports salaries are definitely competitive. For instance, our financial controller will get paid as much as a financial controller at another company. So yeah. Okay.
I'd like to open the panel up to questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I believe there's someone in the audience. There we go. You can walk up where the mic is.
While he's walking up, I'll just mention time zones are fun. Working with Pacific Time, which is the admin team for Rocket League, they send me messages at 11 in the evening and often expect a reply. So I'm often falling asleep in bed watching YouTube on my phone, replying to admins for Rocket League. So time zones can make it very difficult in esports.
You got the spotlight, sir.
Nice. I have a question for you, Kieran. In your amateur phase, how did you actually get pro players on board? Because if you're a small company, you obviously probably weren't offering money. So how did you get pro players on board to then build a pro team when, if you get what I'm saying, everyone else is already on a high level? So how would you bring amateur players up to a pro level?
Really, really good question. What I will say is the esports landscape was very different in 2014 than it is now. The barriers to entry in the past 5 years have just skyrocketed. You probably do need a lot more investment to start an esports team now than you did in 2014. There's a lot of sort of memes and jokes in the esports industry about, do it for exposure. Graphics designers will do graphics work for exposure. Journalists will do work for exposure. It was a bit more like that in 2014 because there wasn't huge commercial deals, there wasn't huge amounts of investment. So it's very much getting players and volunteer staff members to kind of believe in the vision and say, look, this is where we want to get to. Right now, no, we can't pay you a competitive salary, but if you come in, do a few hours, a day work with us, we're going to get to here, and you're going to join us on that journey, and you're obviously going to be massively valued if we get there. Ours is a success story. There are lots of stories that aren't, but I'd say 75% of the people that work at Excel have volunteered at Excel in the past, which is a really cool thing to kind of be shouting about. And actually, the thing I am most proud of with Excel is exactly that point, the fact that we've created all of those jobs for people that put so much time in as volunteers, and now they're full-time professionals in esports. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it's very much, trying to get people to buy into the brand vision and come along on the up and down journey that it was to get to where we are now.
Yeah, that answers it. Thanks, man.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Yep, one there.
So I run a recruitment business that specialises in motorsports and gaming recruitment, purely because that's my passion in those two industries. Gaming, we support people like EA Games, and we look for programmers, software engineers, all those sorts. E-gaming is coming up more and more. Do you guys see an actual market for a recruitment business at the moment? Is there a need for finding talent, or is it so much that you're getting that much volunteering requests that you're finding that yourselves?
I remember sitting at a networking event next to my CEO, who was going, I have no idea how we're going to find a COO because I have no idea where to look. And so there is always going to be a need for jobs that are in the typical industry. I mean, I haven't had experience with this. You guys might have had a bit more experience, but there is always a struggle to find people who have got the right skills, who've got the right passion. And so, having a good team who know how to find the right people is always going to be important.
Yeah, I think there are a number of roles that have been quite difficult to recruit in the past for us. So very much from a production point of view for us, when we're looking at live streaming, etc., that's a really difficult area to recruit for, because there's quite a small pool of people in the UK, even internationally, who know how to produce esports content well. So people with production backgrounds, expertise in production, are very, very difficult to find, but great when you can find them. And marketing as well can often be quite difficult to find some marketing expertise in the industry. The other areas, tournament operations, for example, programs like the volunteers that we've kind of talked about, actually offer some really good ways for people to gain those skills. So those can be found in more traditional ways, but yes, certainly the marketing, production, finance, HR can be more difficult for us to find.
We get a lot of emails as well, British Esports, about people wanting jobs and where they go for that, what route they can go down, what job sites do they go on. So having something central like a recruitment would really help, obviously, those who are looking, and somewhere that obviously we give help point and give advice on. So I think it will be really useful, because there's a lot of jobs out there that need a lot of niche skills, and if they can get used to that, and then you guys yourself can tell them this is what you need, it's more help for them in the long run getting a career in esports.
Yeah, we have to be careful whether we're talking about gaming or esports here, because if we're talking about gaming, we're talking about mammoth companies like Riot Games and Activision Blizzard King, who will be recruiting all over the place all the time. If we're talking about esports, we do use recruiters, but generally only at these sort of more senior levels, so executive or head of department level, because we're looking for people with 10 years experience managing a team. We're only a 5-year-old company, so we look for people who necessarily aren't in the esports industry, but obviously have a passion for it, but maybe in traditional sports or in media and entertainment. There's a lot of crossover between those areas.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And one final question. We're starting to use some of our knowledge in motorsport and vehicle development to transfer skills into the gaming market. Do you see the same thing happening with maybe like the sports industry and what they're using in VAR and the production they use, and those sorts of teams, and the transfer of skills from them into esports as well?
We're an innovative industry, so you're always going to see stuff in our industry done first and converted across, in the same way we're learning from more traditional sports and competitive industries. Because we are trying to set, each game is trying to set a standard and show off to the rest of the industry. Like League of Legends had the hologram of the dragon flying around the stadium. That's never been seen before. And that was, this is what we can do now in the industry. And obviously you're seeing in the music industry holograms getting used. And so that kind of stuff is going to be at the forefront of esports. And it won't be long now before esports sets an example on how to run a stage that will then be used elsewhere.
If we could get one last question, I'm keen if there's anyone else to help anyone. Squeeze one
Thank
last
you,
one last
Thanks.
one in. If you could, we've got 20 seconds, so we'll try and give you the quickest answer we can.
Hello. So currently, so currently I'm studying esports at Digital Institute London, which is part of Staffordshire, but in London. But one of the questions I wanted to ask was about franchising. So franchising just became part of the LEC and was a part of the LCS last year. So I was wondering what your opinion was if franchising is like a detriment or a benefit to teams. Like XL, it seems like it's more of a benefit. It's gotten your brand out there and your organisation.
We're over, Kieran, so if you could be brief.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll do my best. Number one, I went to your place of study the other day, and it's unreal. Like Staffordshire, London Digital Institute. I can't remember the name, but yeah, it's unbelievable. In terms of our relationship with Riot Games is more of a long-term partnership as opposed to a kind of traditional American franchise model where they impose certain brand regulations, etc. on you. We still have control of all that, but we are bought into the league for the long-term vision. I think what it gives is stability to our organisation and to the ecosystem. It provides an easier commercial model for us to get investment and an easier commercial model for us to get commercial partners because we have consistent eyeballs on our brand, etc. So for me, it's a massive positive because the whole comments around like the wild, wild west of esports are days past because in professional leagues like the LEC, it's just not like that at all anymore. It's properly regulated, there's a real season behind it, and there's real commercial value being driven from it. So I'm clearly biased, but I'm a massive fan of the model that we have with the LEC.
Okay, we're over with time, so listen, thanks very much for listening. If you have more questions, come find us on Twitter. We tweeted out at British_esports, and you can see I've linked in the other people and brands there. So thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.